let's start with bugs. If I go to hooks, name resolution, default file settings. Okay, so alright, I'm not entirely sure I understand what the issue is supposed to be here. If treat as to do, if treat as code, so that does do wrap line, and then this version, so if neither of them are set, nothing happens. If one of them, if this one only is set, then that happens. If they're both set, this happens. Yeah. So the people on the Discord were saying something here doesn't work right, but I honestly don't know what they were even suggesting. Let me go look at the config. Maybe if I play around with my config, I can come up with something. Get out of here. Alright, so we want to see... There we go. Show me what the config looks like from here. Perfect. Okay. Enable code wrapping, enable virtual whitespace. If I open up framework.cpp, yep, that's virtual whitespace, that's code wrapping, fantastic. So imagine I do that. Enable virtual whitespace is false, enable code wrapping is still true. I'll get the framework. That works. That's correct. Okay. So config.4coder, whoops. Let's try switching it and think that we, whoops, not those two, keep those the way they were. Enable virtual whitespace, disable code wrapping. Framework. Okay, so I still got code wrapping even though I disabled there, I got it there. Alright, so that is interesting. Let's find out how that's happening. In order to find out, I'm going to need to come over here and go to 4coder default hooks. Okay. Right here. Framework. Alright, enable virtual whitespace, Lex without strings, code wrapping, virtual white space. Get set to true. Do I need to set wrap line to false intentionally then, I guess? Wrap is true, then unwrap is false. Yeah, so I guess I just need to set this. There we go. So now we have virtual white space but no wrapping. Check. Okay, so that's one thing. There's this whole buffer set setting map ID thing. So alright, so yes, so I put up that, and I'm going to blink, bloop. Yeah, so there's somebody complaining that this doesn't work, but maybe I should wait until I have a map ID that's like a user-defined map ID. Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna just need to follow up on this one. I'm actually gonna do that right now so that I don't forget later and put it off, because alright, so, oh, there's people in the chat. Hello, Jim. Hello, Jeremiah. By the way, Jeremiah, I got an interesting email in the 4coder email at some point over the week that I've been meaning to tell you about. Someone was bugging me about, they asked, I'm just going to look it up so I can tell you exactly what they were asking about. I referred them to you. is the conclusion of the story, and now you can wait in suspense. I referred them to you, and then 10 minutes earlier is the rest of the story that you're about to get. So this person asks, I'm wondering how I could use Lisa in 4coder if it is already working. I told them I didn't know the status of that. Last I knew, the new Lisa doesn't have a 4coder integration anymore, and we haven't talked about it in a while, so I actually just told them I have no idea, but they should go talk to you to find out what's going on. So yeah, now that you're here, you can fill me in. What's what's the status? How far or close do you think a day is when there's a 4coder Lisa integration? Kind of like, I think that they must have seen the one on the video I did back in 2016 or 2017. Was it? It must have been back in 2016 I did a video, and they must have been looking at that to get that idea. Hey, we got Ryan in the chat. How's it going? Alright, so I've followed up on that. Casey just retweeted me, and now my Twitter's blowing up a little bit, but I'm going to ignore it for now. Alright, so that's my minor bug fixes. Now we're going to do the major bug fix. Okay, yes, now we're going to deal with command metadata again. So we have a little bit of an issue, which is that okay, that's not it. We got to get rid of those command decals though. Where is the one I'm looking for? That's in 4coder. I don't know. Base commands, for instance. Custom command sig. Alright, I'm looking for the define. It must get defined to somewhere. What's going on here? Ah, there we go. Boom. Alright, here we go. Ryan, I'm doing pretty well. I had a late start because of the internet getting me all distracted, but I got distracted reading stuff on the internet, so I'm a little behind schedule, but I still feel like it's going to be a good day because we have a really nice to-do list of interesting things to work on. And Jeremiah, yeah, that's kind of what I figured. So Jeremiah says that Lisa would basically could be integrated into 4coder in principle. It's just not released yet, and if there's potentially features that 4coder doesn't quite support in terms of like line marks and stuff like that that would be useful for breakpoints. And that's basically where it was back in the day when you had, I feel like it was a totally different Lisa back then, but there was like a 4coder Lisa demo that you whipped up. And I think that that person was just looking for that. Well, I guess you could just take this as a note, since it was someone curious about Lisa. I figured that you might be interested. Alright, so what we're going to do first is I'm going to say, let's do this differently here. If not defined Metapass, then do this. Else what we're going to do is we're going to take all of these and actually, you know what, I'm going to do this a little differently too. We're going to take these now and just put them all down here. What we're going to do is we're going to say if that's defined, or if that's defined, or if that's defined, that's just an error. and we can move this whole thing up here. Okay, so if we're not doing a metapass, we do it this way. Otherwise, we're going to do it this way. I feel like this code looks simple enough now that I could redo it like that so I can find it more easily in the future. So now what we're going to do is say, during a metapass, what we're going to do is that, and then file line. So the idea here is after I pre-process this, I lose file and line information, and so I need a new way to parse it out. So this is the new way we're going to do it, which means we have to rewrite the meta parser a little bit for this particular thing, which I'm hopeful that it won't be very big deal to do that. If it is, I have another method that we can use that it won't be so bad, but that's what I'm hoping will work right there. So then what we need to do is when we have like all these build metadata things here and there that define all of those. We're going to stop defining them directly as we're doing right now. We'll keep no command metadata. We're going to change this to Metapass. And you know what? Actually, we will get rid of that. And we're going to just have to, deal with that too. So Metapass. Let's track down all the occurrences of no metadata. No? Okay, what was it? I just had it. What was it? No command metadata. Alright, so let's see. Yep, all of you become /d metapass. All of you become /d metapass. /d metapass. /d metapass /d metapass. If not defined, metapass, and metapass. Alright, so that's pretty good. We've got it all switched over to using Metapass. Now I need to look at the well, first of all, let me save all that. That shouldn't work anymore because now when I do this, so we need to go to the metadata generator, and we need to talk about how we parse custom command sig. Okay, so extract identifier. Require open parentheses. Man, this is a really bad parsing system. At some point I might put it on the long-term to-do list to do this all over again, because I've gotten like 5 to 10 times better at parsing since then. For now we'll just follow in the footsteps of the code I've already written, because hey, it works. Oh my gosh, it uses default parameters. Ugh, yikes. Default parameters are so bad. I hate them so much. Like, they're so tempting to use, and then as soon as you use them, you're stuck with them, and they make everything worse. This is my feeling. Honestly, they're not even that bad of an idea in theory. It's just that they're like, just barely give you what you want, and it's nowhere near enough, and so you just are locked into a really bad piece of shit rather than having the thing you really need, which is sort of the ability to compose parameters in all kinds of ways through a single code path. so that you can reduce lots of different variations of the same problem down to the one code path. Comma, expected to find, comma. Alright, so we extract an identifier, two more identifiers, and then we're going to require a comma. It's so funny how this is very actually similar to it bears very similar resemblance to my parsing strategy even now. It's just worse. It's like I didn't change the fundamental philosophy in any way. It's just the technique has gotten so much better that all of this would take so many fewer lines of code if I rewrote it. Alright, Flying Solomon asks, what are we working on today? I'm paraphrasing. So I have three big things we're doing, and they're kind of from smallest to biggest here. The first thing is, there's a small problem with the command metadata problem still. There's a small problem with the command metadata system still. So I am fixing that up. Basically, we lost file name and line numbers. Fixing that. Then, in fact, are you the one? I forget. I can't remember if that's you or not who asked about that. Because is Flying Solomon your username here, and that makes you the same as the person who pointed this problem out? Or is that someone else? I can't, it's hard to keep track. Alright. It just dawned on me that I thought maybe that was the same person. Alright, so once we've done that, which we're about halfway through, the next big thing is the footer panel for building. Whoops. The footer panel right here. I have a request now to generalize this so that it can be used for other things, so that you can write custom code that just opens footer panels like without limits, rather than there just being one, so that you can just have a thing that's just like open up footer panel and put this in it, and so it's going to be a generalized footer panel thing. This will also help me fix a bug where there's one particular command that for whatever reason doesn't follow the rule of not using the footer panel. Everything else, like switching between panels, if you do like this, for instance, or this, it knows not to get the footer panel involved. Having that generalized will mean people can do things other than build footers for whatever they want, is the hopeful goal of that. And then finally there's the lister API, getting this so that it's all controlled from the custom layer, so that people can make their own lists of things to scroll through and choose. That's what the next big build will consist of, those big changes, and then whatever other small bug fixes that I happen to do afterwards. Alright, so, yeah, and this will also mean that you can have more than one footer panel, so that you can have like one on each side, or you can have one for each particular kinds of like pop-up that you want. And so they end up just stacking, I guess. I'm not sure exactly what the limits and rules will be, but the plan is to generalize it in a nice way. Okay. Yeah, so now I have those all going to name, but I also need file name and line number. Actually, extract identifier is not going to work for that, is it? Extract identifier. integer. So there we go, file name and line number. And that's actually not going to be an identifier either. That's an integer and that's a string. Okay. Nice. And then what happens? Well, we do all this. Line number, source name. We got to get these in a different way now. So the new entry's line number. Let me go look at the string.h. String to int. String to int. Line number. Done. Yeah, so Flying Solomon says that having auto-completed commands and command history is a big benefit. I agree. Once I have the lister API, I'm going to do it in one of these. So you'll be able to just open one of these up that's like execute command and type it in and see the narrowing list of command names. And it'll have like the command name and then like a sort of description string here for all of the commands. And you'll be able to click on them too, so as your list is narrowing, you can do that, or you can auto-complete the way yours probably already does. And in addition to that, once we have these footer panels, we can do things like we can see the history of commands that have recently been executed and click on one to trigger it, and all kinds of stuff like this. Like, what would probably actually happen is I would just have a thing that's like, here's another list that's the things you've just done, right, recently, or something like this. Or maybe the command list would just be sorted by most recently used. There's all kinds of stuff. Control backspace. What do you mean control backspace? As in right here? I added a control backspace thing for this. You can do like new entry and then control backspace to clear it. Boop. There's also a, you can do that and then hit control, what is it? New entry, and say I do that, and then suppose I do it again. Yeah, control enter restarts the last search query, so you can go control enter to redo whatever you were just searching. Yeah, control backspace for the lister thing is not a bad idea, especially for file navigation, but I could also see it for well, alt up is kind of the general, like the generic one though. I should probably do alt up at some point. Okay, so how am I going to get this? Escape. Yeah, so what I need to do is say this is a little tricky. Source name. Okay, so these are getting allocated. Okay, that's pretty good news. So we can do it as a push. So I can just do char star source name equals push an array onto our partition of chars at the length of filename.size, and then we're going to take string interpret escapes and do file name. We need like a substring of file name, and I forget the rules because I didn't do a good job on the string library. This was my first version of it. What do you expect? Yeah, so substring 1 file name dot size minus 2 source name string interpret escapes +1 push and align onto the partition for 8 bytes, and there we go. So we get a null terminated source name, and I can plop it right there. How does that go? Still not coming through, are ya? Okay, well, then let's pop that open in the debugger and step through it. Alright, we need to build metadata What? Cannot open source file. Default bindings? What are you talking about? Default bindings is right here. Why can't you open default bindings? Source. Code home. Code home slash source. Can you do that? There we go. So that one works. Hey James, so we're just working on, I have a metaprogramming thing that in order to get it to really work right, I'm running it through the compiler's preprocessor, and I failed to think of the fact in the last build that when I do that, it means that the way I extract the information about what file gets associated to which command has to change. So we're working on the command metadata system again so that we can get the file and line information to work again, given that it's going through this new preprocessor thing. And Captain Craft / Jeremiah says, I've never used tries, as in like the string tree thing. Why are you considering those? I'm curious. Let me see if I back up to see if I've missed something. So what I will say is I've actually written code to build those recently, And while it's true that you can build them in linear time and then do a lot of good stuff with them after you've got them, that's a linear time that's a very expensive linear time. Like, unless you're dealing with, if you're dealing with particularly long, yeah, so basically they're very good for looking up terms once you have them, but if you take the total time it takes to build the tree plus the time it takes to look up a term, and compare that to the time it takes to do a linear search for the term, it's usually just not a win to build the tree. The only time it's a win to build the tree is if you're planning to look up terms all the time, or do really complicated stuff. Like, it's very good if you want to find all of the occurrences of a particular keyword, or if you want to find all of the occurrences of a keyword with the allowance for one or two errors. So, like, I know it's a big deal for, like, genomics type stuff when you want to compare two genomes and see if they have, like, where's your longest common string in these two genomes, for instance. It's good for answering those kinds of questions, which would be very hard to answer without them. But if all you're really ever going to do is like autocomplete strings, it's a little bit overkill in my opinion. In theory, it's nice because it's linear, so it should be scalable, but it also fails at that because it's such a big constant multiplier that building a tree builder for a gigabyte of text, like if you have a gigabyte text and you're thinking, well, I want to search this for a match of this particular string, and doing the linear search every time I do that might be too costly, well, good luck actually getting that to build a tree. You're going to have to do some really intense, like, algorithmic work just based on how much memory you can fit in to your, like, how much live memory you can use at a time, because the multiplier on the amount of memory it takes is 1 gigabyte of input text probably means like 32 gigs of active memory to fully store everything you're working on. And so, like, you know, just it has some problems. Yeah, so it's totally true that if you're going to do anything fancier than just match a word or something like this, or complete a word, that the tree has, there's certain times where the tree is the only way to solve a problem, because it can do really crazy stuff like finding the longest common substring, or finding all of the matches of a particular string, allowing for up to one error, or whatever, like things like this. It can do really well, actually. That would be very hard. Like, how would you even go about saying, find me all the matches of this thing with up to 2 errors, where an error means an insertion, a delete, or a replacement of a character? How would you go about checking that? At each position you have to check, is this match within 2 errors of the thing I want? That's not a particularly cheap thing to ask of any string, and you're going to do that across the whole thing. Is very expensive. If you're going to be doing that a lot, then there's a good argument to build the tree. But I guess what I'm saying is the tree is very useful, but think of it as a very high cost investment to build the tree in the first place. You have to be looking to get a lot out of that tree, not just a little. Okay, so we've gotten it to build. What I want to see is, what does the metadata look like after that? Okay, it looks like that. Alright, so now you can go away for a minute. I'm going to pull open build metadata generator.exe. Of course, I will wrap that conversation up with, it's totally worth it for your own education to build the code that does things like that if you're interested in them. I mean, I'm giving you my analysis so that you, for the benefit of, like, if you'd rather be someone who saves the time, but totally put it on your to-do list, because it's a tricky algorithm. It's the kind of algorithm that practicing being able to implement that makes you better at grokking algorithms in general. Okay, so now I need to get the right parameters -r. Code home is w for ed code. w4ed build. What's the name of the preproc file? Yeah, a sorted list of suffixes is a pretty nice way to get it done. I mean, keep in mind, it's slower than a normal sort, so it's not an n log n thing to sort a suffix list, because a comparison between two strings takes length of on for a string of length n. So each comparison in a sort for a suffix list actually takes O of n time, and so if you think of an as like a I don't know, any to pick your favorite n log n sorting algorithm, that really means it's doing n log n comparisons, which means now you're doing n log n times n amount of work, because that's how many comparisons you did, and each comparison takes O of n time, so you end up with an n squared log n algorithm if you just do the normal sort. So yeah, that's something to keep in mind about how well that works, but it totally does work well in the sense of it's easy to get right and gives you all those benefits for reasonable, for like non-crazy large n's. It works pretty well. So Delix/Ryan is asking about hashing. I've considered doing hashing for stuff like that. The problem with hashing is that you can't do prefix searches. So like, suppose you have you want to search for the word like right, and you want it. The thing you're actually looking for turns out to have the word rights in it, like it's got an S at the end or something. Or perhaps you're in like the 4coder scenario where you just want to do a narrowing list like this. With hashing, you can't do this. With hashing, you only get a match at a full match, because there's no such thing as a hash function, at least as far as I don't know of any hash function that allows you to hash the word build, and then from that hash, get all of the strings that have the word build as a prefix, so that you can generate all the hashes that you could ever need to match against. Hashing is nice, but it only does direct exact matches. It can't do substring matches. So for like a narrowing list like that, it's not at all appropriate, or like doesn't even solve the problem. Now what you can do is, instead of building a full suffix tree, you can build what a thing I've called a word tree, which makes it a much smaller tree. Basically you delimit the words and you stop treating it as one large string, but rather as a series of small strings that have all been plopped together, and then that works out pretty well. Yeah, you could imagine that, and so Ryan is kind of getting towards the idea I had when I came up with the idea of a word tree, which is to take each word prefix, like take your words as independent strings that don't live in the same superstring like you. Normally you do the whole document, but instead you could take independent words and treat each word as a string on its own, and then start hashing all their prefixes. And then instead of hashing, it turns out if you understand the algorithm for building a tree well, you can do the same kind of thing with some tweaks, which is, well, like I said, why it's useful to learn how to build a tree even if it's not what you actually use, because you just learn how to handle, like, how to think about these things really well after you do it. Later. Alright, so that's good. I need to come over here and take this out. This doesn't need to be here. So if I do run that again... No, wait, no, not that. I already have that. Run that again. There we go. Close that. Alright, now I just want to check real quick that we have this. Alright, perfect. So this is the thing we're going to get, custom, and you can see we have file names in here, with line numbers now, and for some reason the parse is failing to actually work after that. So 59, 60, 61. Interesting. Okay. That answers a question I've always had. Now we can do this. Folder. Then we go in here and parse this file. We unencode the name. File dump it. Alright, so that came out just fine. Parse the text. And here we go. Nothing. Tell me the first time you see one of these. Okay. Vaccine. Custom doc. P token dot start plus text dot string square bracket p token dot size. So close parenthesis. Okay, I see. So we just need to be able to search farther back is what's happening here. Comma. And there, it's out of backwards motion already. Okay. It's a really horrible parsing system. Do 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 do. Yeah, Ryan, I highly, if since you're thinking about it, I highly recommend trying to implement, just if you ever have free time for your own, for the sake of your own, like, practice to understand. Once you've done this once, you'll always be able to think about string manipulation at this level without getting too, like, lost in the, like, what counts as a prefix, what's a substring, what's a suffix. You get it all straightened out. Just implement Ukonen's algorithm once or twice. It's hard going the first time I did it, at least. Like, I was reading off a paper and I got it working, and then I spent some time thinking about what is this actually doing and wrote another one from scratch based on just the way the algorithm actually works, and was able to fully sort of internalize it. And basically, what you get out the other end is the idea that if you can think of, like, the prefix, the suffix, like, every substring is just a prefix of a suffix of the whole string, right? And what building these trees actually is about is you build all of the suffixes into a tree, and then you can search the prefix of any suffix and therefore find any substring you want. And how you get a tree that actually has the properties that are needed to do this is something I was only able to fully understand once I could implement that algorithm. There are a few O of n, and you don't even need to get it in O of n time. Like, the way I first learned how to do it is to do it in n cubed time, and then some optimizations get it down to n squared, and some more optimizations get it down to O of n. Getting it down to O of n is important so that you understand fully why it's possible to do it in O of n, because if you just do it in n cubed, you'll get the data structure, but it not necessarily fully understand. I don't know. There's just a lot you can learn from the way the reason you can get it down to O of n is because there's a lot of tight relationships between structures and substructures in that tree as you're going, and taking advantage of those interrelationships is what lets you get it down all the way to O of n. And so fully understanding that part is what will give you the intuition about, like, oh yeah, there's these properties, and so you can't do this and you need that and whatever. Alright, so starting from wherever this starts from, the first thing it gets is custom doc parenthesis string comma number comma string comma identifier parenthesis. Alright, we're going to give it at least 10 steps back. Hey, there we go. So killrect still didn't show up. Interactive open did show up. And let me go look at right here. We once again have the correct file name and line number, it looks like. So I think that is Checkamundo. So let me commit that. Fixing the file name and line number data in the command metadata. There we go. Yeah, it sounds like you're thinking about the right kind of thing there. Basically, if you the dead simplest way to envision it is that you have a root node, and that root node can be thought of as containing a child for each suffix that string has. So like the entire string is one suffix, and then the entire string minus the first character, and the entire string minus 2 characters, and so on. You have a suffix starting at each character in the string. And the tree has all of those as one of its leaf nodes, right? Is that leaf node, the path from it back to the root, it completely covers that string, that suffix string. And so from the root, you then say, here's the next character I want to look for, and you look at the children and go, here's the next child you're looking at, and you can go there, and then you can walk down that tree. And once you've walked down far enough, you either hit a leaf that says, oh, here's you've found an exact match. You are in an internal node which says, hey, there are more than one match for the string you just looked for. Or you get to a point where there is nowhere to go and you find out, oh, that string exists nowhere in there. And so it turns out that once you have the string, searching for matches becomes O of n, where n is the length of the search string, not the length of the the string, the document you're searching through. Which is why it's a nice thing to have, and the basis for all the tricks you can do with it kind of are built on that things that would have been expensive become cheap because they're now based on the length of the query string and not the length of the document, so you can, yeah, you can imagine how you could derive a lot of benefits from that, I assume. Okay, so one thing down, our next big situation is we want to look at the footer panels. So let me pull open 4coder again. Actually, I might take a moment to cycle the streams. I didn't eat lunch before we started, and I'm getting pretty hungry. That's an hour stream on fixing bugs and the command metadata thing. I feel like a footer panel stream all of its own would be good. So yeah, I'm going to take a short break so I can get some food, and I will be back.